Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Portatredis MMA. This is episode 21 of Portatredis Picks, and we're about to go in on a topic that's long overdue. You've seen the title, you know what's coming. Today, I'm breaking down why Jon Jones is not the greatest of all time. That's right, I said it. Jon Bones Jones is not the GOAT. I know this is going to stir up some controversy, and I'm here for it, but let's be real. Sometimes the truth hurts, and today we're going to get fucking real about Jon Jones. But before we get into it, like I said last time, we got some spicy content coming up in the next couple of weeks, so make sure you subscribe, and you know what? Let's not spoil anything else. That's enough of the formalities. It's time to delve into it. Let's talk Jon Jones. Let's go. All right, so let's start with the biggest elephant in the room. No, I'm not going to say that. Anyway, why does the UFC and Dana White continue to push this narrative that Jon Jones is the undisputed GOAT?
Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. Jon Jones.
Oh my God, bro, is dick riding all you do?
No, I'm saying
you literally got that dick in your mouth right now. I see it.
Stop writing. When you say stop writing, are you talking about Jon Jones?
Everywhere you turn, from fight promos to press conferences, Dana White is over here acting like Jon Jones can walk on over. Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time. That's the only thing you hear from the UFC's mouthpieces.
There's a lot of stats about him, who he's beaten. I don't know.
Did you guys read them?
There's a lot of stuff.
Did you guys read the stats?
And if you dare to disagree, you're an idiot who shouldn't be talking about MMA. At least according to Dana White. This constant over-the-top praise is beyond exhausting at this point, and it feels like a massive PR campaign rather than an honest fucking debate. Look, I'm not saying Jon Jones is shit, and I'm not denying Jon Jones' talent inside the cage. The man's got skills. No one is arguing that. But we're talking about the greatest of all time. You have to look at the whole picture, not just the highlight reels and the statistics the UFC conveniently picks. And when you look at Jon Jones' entire career, the whole fucking thing, inside and outside the cage, it's hard to justify calling him the undisputed GOAT without some serious asterisks next to his name. Firstly, let's talk about his good friend Ped, aka the PEDs. Jon Jones has failed not one, not two, multiple fucking drug tests throughout his career. And I'm not talking about minor slip-ups, pulsing picograms, this bullshit. This man has been caught with performance-enhancing drugs in his system more times than I can count. UFC 200. It was meant to be the greatest event of all time. The event was supposed to be headlined. He was supposed to headline the event, and that was ruined because he tested positive for clomiphene and lestrozole. Oh, fuck me. Anyway, the whole situation forced the UFC to scramble and gave us Misha fucking Tate versus Amanda Nunes as the main event for one of the greatest cards of all time. Exactly. Whose fault was that? Joe Rogan? Whose fault was that? Dana White? And then, at UFC 214, he failed after knocking out Daniel Cormier, tested positive for the steroid Turinabol. Let's be clear, these aren't accidents. When you test positive multiple times, it's no longer a mistake. It's no longer a mistake. It's a pattern.
I beat him fair and square the first time and off of steroids, and I beat him the second time off of steroids.
That awfully specific.
Okay, and then there's the infamous UFC 232, where they had to move an entire event from Nevada to California just so Jon Jones could fight. Why? Because he had another positive test, this time for the picograms of Turinabol. And what did the UFC do? They rolled out Dana White and Jeff Nowitzki to downplay the whole thing. They fed us this bizarre narrative.
These are all facts. I mean, I even laid them out in a commercial for all the stupid people that can't wrap their head around it.
About how picograms don't really count and how it was just trace amounts from the previous test. But come on, are we really buying that bullshit? Imagine another fighter had tested positive that many times. Would they still be getting title shots? Would they still even be in the UFC? I doubt it. Now, let's look at the UFC markets.
Do you have to question everything he's ever accomplished now? Because this is back-to-back.
It's crazy. But the thing that's sad is when you start saying, should we question everything Jon's ever done? He's the best to ever do it. He didn't need those drugs.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But then why, Dana?
I don't know. Only he can answer that question.
Let's look at how the UFC markets Jon Jones as undefeated. They act like he's never tasted defeat, which is simply not true. He has a loss on his record, and yes, it was a disqualification for illegal strikes against Matt Hamill, but a loss is a loss. You can't just erase that from history, and here's the thing. Jon Jones fans are quick to brush under the rug, but those same fans will defend his controversial wins by pointing out the fact that the judges raised his hand. Like, come on, pick one. Take the fight against Dominic Reyes, for example. Reyes clearly won the first 3 rounds of that fight, but somehow Jones got the decision. And yet, Jones supporters will scream, "He won, it's official." You can't have it both ways. Either the results matter or they don't. Speaking of controversial decisions, we can't also forget about the Thiago Santos fight. Santos blew out nearly every ligament in his fucking knee during the fight, yet still managed to push Jon Jones to a split decision. How is that the GOAT? How could the GOAT not finish a guy who could barely stand? And let's not forget that Jones was coming off 2 other less impressive performances, going the distance with Anthony fucking Smith. And he fought him, it wasn't even on paper. And the aforementioned Reyes, where, let's be real, he got his butt kicked for 3 rounds. This brings me to another point. Jones has benefited from massive physical advantage throughout his career. He's always had an insane reach advantage, and most of his opponents were significantly smaller than him. At light heavyweight, he towered over guys like Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, and even DC. When you're constantly the bigger, longer fighter, of course you're going to have an edge. It wasn't until Jones fought someone his own size, like Reyes, Santos, even Gustafsson, that we started to see the cracks in his game. Now, let's talk about how the UFC cherry picks their highlights. They love showing Jon Jones' dominant performances, but conveniently live out the dirty tactics, the eye pokes, the illegal knees, the endless grabbing of the gloves. It's all there. Jon Jones has admitted to it. The man has openly said in interviews that he knows he'll probably poke his opponent's eyes during the fight. That's not an accident. That's straight up fucking cheating and dirty fighting. And yet, the UFC continues to ignore it and focus on the flashy knockouts and the submission wins. All these fucking steroids. Ooh, yeah, all these fucking steroids. And when was the last time Jon Jones knocked down an opponent with his fucking fists? He's scared to fight Tom Aspinall, saying Tom Aspinall doesn't deserve it. Tom Aspinall's a natural heavyweight who will fucking squash anybody with his hands. When was the last time Jon Jones did that? On all his whole career in PEDs? Yeah, the UFC continues to ignore it and focus on his flashy knockouts and submission wins. Another issue I have with Jon Jones' GOAT conversation is how the UFC completely disregard his opponent's PED usage while trying to justify Jon Jones' fails. Yes, Jones fought on the same guys who were likely on something, especially before USADA came in. But here's the thing. Those guys stopped performing at a high level after USADA started cracking down. Guys like Vitor Belfort and Chael Sonnen deflated once USADA stepped in. Meanwhile, Jon Jones kept testing positive even after USADA started regulating the sport. That's a huge difference. He wasn't just caught once before the new rules. He was caught multiple times after they were in place. Wow, what does that mean? It means he was fucking cheating. And then, there's the heavyweight saga. After 3 years of sitting out, Jon Jones makes his highly anticipated return, and instead of fighting the reigning champion Francis Ngannou, he waits for Ngannou to be forced to leave the UFC, basically, and then fights Cyril Gane, who, while talented, had just been exposed by Francis Ngannou for his lack of wrestling. Yes, Jones submitted Gane quickly, but let's not pretend like this was the toughest fight available. And now, Jones is lined up to fight Stipe Miocic, who's 42 and hasn't fought since getting KO'd by Ngannou in 2021. Alex Pereira wasn't in the UFC when Stipe won his last fucking fight. Now he's a 2-divisional champion. Is it really that legacy-defining fight, or is it just another carefully selected opponent for Jon Jones to add to his resume? Jones fans will argue that everyone is on steroids, but that's just a weak deflection. Yes, some fighters might be using PEDs, but that doesn't excuse Jones' repeated failures. The fact that he tested positive so many times should automatically take him out of the GOAT conversation. You can't be the greatest of all time if you're constantly cheating. It's that fucking simple. Now, let's not forget the personal side of things if we want. We're talking about a guy who's had multiple run-ins with the law, DUIs, hit and runs, domestic violence charges. I'm not saying your personal life should define your career, but it certainly plays a role in your legacy. John Jones' legacy is marred with scandals both inside and outside the cage. It's fucking tarnished. And yet, the UFC continues to promote him as this untouchable figure. It's mind-boggling. Anyway, boys and girls, whew, that felt good. That's been, felt something in my chest. That was episode 21 of Portatredis Picks. And I know I've said a lot, but this is a conversation we need to have. John Jones may have accomplished a lot of incredible things inside the octagon, but when you look at the wider picture, the failed drug tests, the controversies, the dirty fighting, it's hard to see how anyone can still call him the GOAT. But hey, that's just my opinion. I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me, or is John Jones really the greatest? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to smash that like button. Subscribe for more content. You know the drill. See you in the next one. Deuces. Well. The next episode of Portatredis Picks, episode 22, is going to be in another rant. I'm just in the mood for it. And there's also not much else going on this week in the UFC news. But I'll be discussing why Joe Rogan sucks at commentating. Yep, I'm going there. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. It's going to be a good one. Deuces.